6:30 a.m. FS1 every single day. How is getting up early for you?
I mean, listen, getting up sucks no matter what time you get up. Like, if I had to get up at 8:30, I'd want to sleep longer. So I get up at 3:30 every day. That ain't great, but I mean, it's a great job, so you deal with it. During the NBA playoffs, these 10:30 start times, I'm glad they're done, man. Because the game ends at 1, and so you sleep for 2.5 hours. Like, you go to bed at 11:30, get 4 hours sleep, take a nap during the day, you can make it work. Going to bed at 1 and getting up at 3:30, that ain't fun. But I'm not. I mean, I got a great job.
The finals, those games start at 9.
Yeah, but that's better than 10:30.
That's true.
There's these damn Portland games were starting at 10:30. A lot of the Golden State games were starting at 10:30. I mean, that's an outrage.
Yeah.
The Skip and Shannon show Undisputed starts at 6:30 as well. They also get up around 3:30. But the game's in 3 hours early. They live in LA. Like the latest game starts at 7:30 at night. So it's just very different. But whatever, it's no problem.
Do you have a daily routine down?
Yeah, I go to bed around 11:30 or 12 unless these stupid games are on so late. And then I do not eat until after the show. I eat a giant lunch. I'm looking forward to that today. It'll be Chipotle. And then I pass out until it's time for me to go pick up my kids from school. So that's what I do. That's my routine. And then I see, has Chris Mannix picked a new team to win the Eastern Conference? Oh, not today.
That's nice.
That wasn't today.
Well, to be fair, like, we are now 4 games away from my original team getting to. Look, I'm not going to do it. I am not going to pick the Boston Celtics.
Why would you? You've already done it 3 times.
No,
twice. Maybe 3, depends.
I was ahead of the curve in November. In November, I said the Celtics. I wrote that long column. The Celtics are going to win the Eastern Conference.
Oh,
after
you
they beat
think
Golden
they
State.
would have if Kyrie were healthy?
Yes. Oh, yeah. They'd be clean without Kyrie.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's fun to play the make-believe game. Kyrie wouldn't be much better than Terry Rozier has been. Now, Kyrie's a better player, but when you incorporate the defensive end of the ball, I don't know that he'd be much better.
Well, so hold on. You wouldn't just take away Terry Rozier, though. You'd be adding Kyrie to Terry Rozier and fleshing out a bench that's 7 deep right now.
Yeah, I mean, again, theoretically, I see what you're saying. Now,
Shane Larkin wouldn't be in the rotation.
Shane Larkin, that's a fair point. I do think this, because people think I'm a Kyrie hater, and I'm not. I think Kyrie next year, I would be the heavy favorite for 6th man of the year. I mean, I think he's going to be Kyrie coming off the bench with Rozier, Scary Terry being your starting point guard, scoring off the bench like a rich man's Nate Robinson. I see nothing wrong with that.
I don't think he can do that. Neither do you, by the way.
I mean, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, I don't know if you want to mess with what works, but that's fine.
I think you got to trade Terry Rozier.
Oh, the untradeable Terry Rozier.
I never called.
No, Danny Ainge, not you. I'm not talking about you.
Yeah.
For a long time, that was a punchline. And by the way, Danny Ainge's been proven right.
Yeah.
People were wondering, why do you want this Terry Rozier kid from Louisville? People thought he was overdrafted when they took him.
It's true that teams tried to acquire him many times,
and he
has been deemed largely untouchable.
And listen, he saw something that I didn't see. I didn't think Terry Rozier could ever do this over a dozen game stretch in the regular season, much less the postseason. Rozier's been awesome, man. And he's a tough guy. Guy from Youngstown, Ohio with wings tattooed on his neck. Like, that's not a guy you mess with.
If you had to choose between Rozier and Marcus Smart for the next 4 years, if you could only sign one of them, who would you take?
The smart part of me says it's obviously Rozier. Like, all the advanced numbers say it'd be Rozier. All the eye test things say it's Rozier. But for Marcus Smart is like some magical elixir for this team. I'm sometimes too reliant on numbers. There is no number that explains why the team is so much better with Marcus Smart on the court than without Marcus Smart on the court. It's like that intangible thing that it does seem to energize his teammates when he gets to a loose ball or when he takes a charge, and it doesn't deflate them when he pulls up from 3 as it would me if I were on his team. Like, he's valuable to them, and I think he'd be cheaper, right? I think that he has specific value there that isn't necessarily transferable the way Terry Rozier is valuable in a league that is the best it's ever been at point guard. He's proven himself to be a starting point guard in this league, at least in my opinion.
Well, Marcus Smart has spiked his salary demands this summer. Like, if Marcus Smart, if he went out in February and the Celtics got bounced in the first round, his value would probably be X. Now it's X plus something because of how he played in that second round and how he's probably going to play in the conference finals. It's a tough call for me. I would probably take Smart because next year, and follow me here, next year, it feels like Boston could put out the kind of death lineup that would rival Golden State's, because you could play Kyrie, Gordon Hayward, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Al Horford all together. Not for entire games, but for long stretches. And you can outscore everybody. So if I can put that lineup on the floor, I want a defensive weapon off the bench. Terry Rozier is a capable defensive player. Marcus Smart is a great defensive player. So I want the defensive Swiss Army knife that I can bring onto a court in any situation.
I think that's excellent analysis. I agree with you. I don't know if you want to build your team for the only 2 games you're going to get to play against Golden State, because when LeBron goes to Philly, like Boston's drawing dead in the East anyway. What am I wrong?
Well, I think you might be wrong about LeBron going to Philly. But
if he were to go to Philly, like this is... Well, okay, never mind. I'll let you run your own show.
No.
I just, listen, that is, I do have this question about Boston.
Okay. Just one?
How much better would they really be with their stars?
Come on.
Man, my only thing is you can't have it both ways. In that who said that they were as interchangeable pieces as anyone's ever seen? It was said last week, I think, by one of the coaches, that it almost feels like no matter who's out there, you are getting the production of the guy who is in front of him, or at least 90% of it. So I don't think this is the typical team where it's like, wow, we're going to add Kyrie Irving to this team, because you are getting 80% of Kyrie from Terry Rozier. Like, we're going to add Gordon Hayward. Well, you're getting, 85% of what you expected from Hayward from Jason Tatum. I think it's a fair question. Will Gordon Hayward ever be better than Jason Tatum? And by that, I mean this. I think we saw from Paul George that type of injury, you can come back in a year, but it usually takes a year back to get to your full strength. And by then, Jason Tatum will be in year 3. And you were right about Tatum. Like, I got to give you credit. You were early on it. I was way off on Tatum when they made the trade. That was obviously a heist. Now we look at it. They got the best player in the draft, not named Donovan Mitchell, and some people say the best player in the draft, and they added this awesome pick. Like, that was one of the best moves Danny Ainge has ever made. Mm-hmm. But and you saw it early. You said you think it's a guy that can win scoring titles, that can be a 25-point.
And I thought he could be an impact player in these playoffs.
And I did not. I whiffed on that 3 times, because I kept saying this is the last rookie to make a big impact on a playoff team. Mm-hmm. Well, 3 guys did it this year. I mean, Mitchell, Simmons. I know Simmons had a rough second round, and Tatum's been extraordinary. I mean, 7 straight games, 20-plus points. The only guy as a rookie to ever do that longer is Kareem. It's remarkable what he's done.
You say, though, and we're talking to Nick Wright, the co-host of First Things First on FS1. He's joining us here, Dan Patrick Show. You say, would Boston be better right now with those guys? But again, I'd go back to the fact that you're not subbing out a Kyrie for a Terry Rozier. You're not subbing out Gordon Hayward for a Jaylen Brown. You move one of those guys to the bench. And one of the problems Boston's had is scoring droughts. They've had 3, 4, 5-minute stretches where they can't score. All of a sudden, if Jaylen Brown is your 6th man, you can score more with that second unit. In Terry Rozier, you can score more. Now, they're going to have a lot of problems next year. I don't know. It's going to be, you're going to have to see some Brad Stevens wizardry for that to happen next, for things to work.
Speaking of Brad Stevens, real quick.
Yeah.
Do you feel badly that you cost him votes for Coach of the Year?
Votes? What was?
Well, I think I happen to believe, I don't know if you talked about this yesterday, I have real reason to believe the reason Brad Stevens was shut out by his colleagues for Coach of the Year is maybe justifiable bitterness from coaches towards guys such as yourself and myself, the talking heads who act as if Brad Stevens is a deity. And I think there was some bitterness towards the idea that Boston had no talent. Mm-hmm. I had heard from people in the league, like, listen, Brad's a great coach, but the way you guys talk about him compared to the rest of us is unfair to everyone else. That's the only... Dwane Casey winning Coach of the Year is fine. You can make a case for it. But Brad Stevens getting no votes, to me, that was verification that there is a feeling in the league amongst the coaches, because that's obviously not the media award. That's the coaches, the one the coaches vote on, that the coaches said, can we just pump the brakes a little bit on worshiping at the altar of Brad Stevens? Now, I still worship at the altar of Brad Stevens. I'm not going to go as far as your Twitter poll. Would you rather have him or any player in the league?
Fair question.
But there's only,
it can't be LeBron, though, because it's not going to be, because it's an expansion team. That's what I said in the front. It's an expansion team.
You don't want your expansion team to go to the NBA Finals in year 1? There's to me a dozen players I'd take ahead of Stevens.
Would you really, if you're the GM of the Las Vegas Sharks or whatever, And you're saying like you're building your team out for the next 10 years. You don't take Giannis or Embiid over LeBron?
Well, hold on. Maybe I would, but I wouldn't take Brad Stevens over.
Okay, no, that's fair. And more people voted that.
Yeah, there's a dozen players I would take.
Honestly, I would take the player too. I didn't vote on that. People are going after me saying, "Oh, this is a ridiculous poll." No. I didn't vote. I just put the question.
You put the question out there, and it's interesting. If you're asking me like which player right now, I could have any player in the league, and I'm getting them. I don't have to worry about them leaving. Right, I'm getting them from now until their career's over. Mm-hmm. My hierarchy would go Giannis 1, Anthony Davis 2, Ben Simmons 3, Embiid 4. And then at that point, I think I'd take LeBron because I think he's got another 3 years as the best player in the league, mm-hmm. and another couple after that while he waits on his son to get to the league, mm-hmm. where he's going to still be a top 10 guy. I think that's a fair point. I'm also a huge Giannis fan. I think Giannis is everything people are saying Ben Simmons going to be. Different type of player, but taking over the league. I think Giannis is about to do that.
Well, Ben Simmons is going to have to do what Giannis did and deconstruct his jump shot and reconstruct it in a different way. Giannis right now has a clean-looking jump shot. Ben Simmons is all kinds of messed up.
Do you think it's possible Ben Simmons is shooting with the wrong hand?
It's interesting.
Do you think it's possible that Ben Simmons should be shooting right-handed?
I don't know if he can switch it.
But he is. It's something. I'm going to misquote it, and I apologize. He's like right-handed in everything but basketball.
Yeah.
So it's just when the shot's that bad. Dude took 59 shots in round 2. 2 were outside of the paint. Only 10 were outside of 6 feet. And he was 2 of 10 on those outside of 6 feet. And the problem with Ben Simmons is it's not that he can't make a jump shot. Mm-hmm. It's that he won't shoot a jump shot. Like you got to, even if you're going to shoot 30%, you got to be a threat to actually shoot the ball. They know he won't do it. I also talked to someone that knows Ben really well that thinks what happened in this round will be good for him.
I agree.
They had this sense of arrival before actually arriving, and this will humble them a bit.
80% of the mistakes Ben Simmons made in that second round, he's not going to make them again. Those are mistakes you make as young players. I thought the Sixers would take their lumps in that first round against Miami. They were better than that. They pushed through the rookie stuff or the early young player stuff and won that series. This is where they took their lumps. But Oklahoma City did it. All the young teams did it. To put a button on what you said about Brad Stevens, why he didn't get the votes there. A couple reasons. It definitely could be some of the stuff that you talked about, that we in the media put him up on a pedestal, justifiably in a lot of ways because of what he's done with this team. His out-of-timeout plays are brilliant, as we saw in that Philadelphia series. One, Dwane Casey, if he got all 30 votes, I don't think this would come up. I don't think we'd be having this conversation because it's a one-line vote. You can only vote for one coach. And Dwane Casey has been a part of the coaching fraternity for a long time. He's been an assistant coach, a head coach. Everybody likes Dwane Casey. He has been there, and he deserves it. For the regular season, he was great. Postseason, different story. The problem I have is why is Doc Rivers getting a vote? Why are Quinn Snyder? Why did he get a vote?
7 guys got votes.
Why
and
did
Brad
they get
Stevens
votes?
Not being.
That's my issue.
And I thought, listen, if it was a 5-line ballot, Quinn Snyder would be on my ballot.
Quinn Snyder was third on my Coach of the Year ballot.
Right. So I don't have. I understand all that. It was odd though that Brad Stevens was shut out entirely.
Yeah,
it was really odd.
The 6 votes that went to somebody other than Dwane Casey. Where's my issue? If you don't think it's Casey, how do you not think it's Brad Stevens? Given everything that's gone on in Boston. All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to get to the Western Conference as well. Steph Curry versus James Harden. Rockets home court advantage of the star power of Golden State. Get into that with Nick Wright, co-host of First Things First, coming up next. Nick's trying to go to the Celtic Cavs, game 1 Sunday. Mm-hmm. And he told me during the break that if he goes, Nick is a advocate for LeBron. How would you describe
I'm a
believer, true believer?
I'm a truth teller.
Wow.
I would like to think I'm one of the only honest people in the media about this.
There we go.
This has been pretty obvious for the last couple years that ever since LeBron completed the greatest 3-game stretch in the history of the sport against the greatest team in the history of the sport to deliver his birthright to the city of Cleveland, he's been the greatest basketball player we've ever seen. Now, people can argue otherwise, but they don't really mean it. They just do it because they think they have to, or they have a nostalgia bias, or they're, some diehard Boston fan. I'm not certain. But, people know what they're seeing in their heart of hearts. Go ahead.
You could have stopped a truth teller. Okay. That would have been enough there. But you're going into Boston, and you're on TV, and you've been a truth teller, as you said, and on social media. You're very popular there. Get Nick Wright on
I'm
social media.
well known there.
You're well known.
Popularity is a different story.
So you're going to walk into Boston, and people are going to walk up to you in the concourse of the TD Garden and buy your seats. They're going to see you sitting there, maybe in your Cleveland Cavalier jersey. I don't know.
I don't have a Cleveland Cavalier jersey, but my daughter does.
They're going to see you there, and you're going to say what when Nick Wright sucks, gets hurled down from.
Listen, I went to Philly. I have no beef with Philly, but I had the audacity when Carson Wentz went down to say, if you lose an MVP, you can't win a Super Bowl. And at the beginning of the playoffs, I said there are 5 teams in the NFC that can win the Super Bowl. Philly's not one of them. And then I went to the NFC Championship game with Chris Carter, sitting in a box, the Vikings box essentially there, and the crowd in front of me started a Nick Wright sucks chant at the link in Philadelphia. I would imagine I'm much more disliked in Boston than I was in Philadelphia.
I've made sure of that.
Of course. I would also imagine people will be that drunk or drunker because at least those Eagles fans weren't preemptively drinking away their sorrows.
Mother's Day,
the Boston
Sunday,
fans will be. Yeah, but they know they're in for 2 hours of pain.
Yeah.
Like they know that the last time LeBron lost to the Boston Celtics in that arena in a playoff game, it was 2012. I do believe LeBron has more career playoff victories in TD Garden than any current member of the Boston Celtics. So I mean, listen, people can heckle me, and I'm sure early in the game they'll feel good about it, and around the third quarter they'll sheepishly leave me alone as Cleveland is dominating the game.
How many games Cleveland win this series?
How many games does Cleveland win? Well, they'll win 4. How many
games do they in how many games?
Listen, it'll be 2-0 going back to Cleveland. Now, I think they could get. It's tough because 5 maximum is the longest this series will go in my eyes. Also, the schedule fell unluckily for Boston because you have 3 days off between games 2 and 3. So LeBron played famously, obviously, all 82 this year and the All-Star game. So didn't get a full time off at the All-Star break, right? Then he 7 games in round 1, 7 exhausting games, and then back-to-back every day, or every other day, I should say, in round 2. So this is the freshest he will have been all year going into game 1. Then it's a quick turnaround going into game 2, but then 3 days off going into game 3. LeBron will play 44 minutes a night if they need him to, and Boston doesn't have an answer for that. And Al Horford's 1-16 in his career against LeBron in the playoffs.
Yeah, but again, you love historical context, and I don't, and it bit me in the ass when I said Toronto didn't have the same mental issues they did after Game 1. I own that one. But Al Horford, and we talked about this during the break, but Al Horford, in all his years, has not had an Aaron Baines playing alongside him. Al Horford in Atlanta, he had Paul Millsap. So he had to be the physical guy, and he's not the physical guy. Last year in Boston, he had Amir Johnson. Al Horford still had to be a more physical guy. Now he's out there, and he has Aaron Baines.
Aaron Baines is not going to be able to play, man.
Again, if Tristan Thompson plays...
But Tristan Thompson's not going to start. They're going to start with Kevin Love.
Nah, they'll play Aaron Baines out there. Look, Aaron Baines first of all, he's an excellent perimeter defender for a big man. He's an excellent perimeter defender. They will play Aaron Baines in this series.
Okay, listen, if you're relying on a big Aaron Baines contribution, then I rest my case.
No,
Senator.
to offset the physical stuff.
The Horford stuff, I get it, and it's odd. I saw Horford go dominate Joel Embiid. He ate Joel Embiid's lunch on both ends of the court in this last round. I believe Embiid to be the second best big man, healthy big man in the game behind Anthony Davis. Tristan Thompson's historically been a really tough matchup for him. Kevin Love's been a tough matchup for him. I guess he wasn't even on the team when your guy Kelly Olynyk ripped out his shoulder when the Celtics a few years ago. So it's odd. The matchups are weird.
How did Kelly Olynyk become my guy?
I just figure. He's a Boston guy. I figure a few
white guy
years
from Boston.
Yeah, I just figure a few years ago you were like everything you said about Aaron Baines. You're like, hasn't faced a guy like Kelly Olynyk. Yeah. Let me tell you about him.
It's just a new bar stool at JJ Foley's. They hey,
exactly
Kelly,
right.
Come on down.
So I think Boston. I thought Boston would lose to Philly. I was wrong on that.
I thought they'd lose to Philly.
I thought Philly just had too much talent that even if they were too young, and Philly at that point in time was the hottest team in the NBA. They'd not only won 20 of 21, they had the league's second best record since Christmas Day. Think about how long ago that was. Philly it's weird to say, Philly could have won that series 4-1, and they lost it 4-1. There were 3 50, not even 50-50 games. There were 3 games that were 75-25 Philly, and Brad Stevens and the Celtics out-executed and won them all. I don't think that will be the case in this round. And you know this stat probably better than me. I'm going to butcher it. It's like 14 times this year the Celtics been down at least 15 points and won the game.
Yeah,
something like that. They have had this belief, if it's close late, we got it. Well, nobody has that belief more than LeBron and the Cavs. Like that is the other crazy thing that's happened this postseason is the who hit the three. OG Anunoby, pardon me, hits the three to tie the game in Toronto, and it's like a Tom Brady situation. You look, you're like, oh, you left LeBron way too much time. Like that's the level that he's playing at. They got no answer.
You think coaching matters in this series? Because look. Nate McMillan, good coach. I don't consider Nate a great tactician in the NBA. Dwane Casey, I don't consider him a great tactician. Brad Stevens has a track record, great tactician. So LeBron's going to see different looks. I don't know what they're going to do with him. I don't know if they treat LeBron in the same way they treated Giannis and Joel Embiid and say we're going to let him get what he gets and stop the three-point shooters. But they're going to have different looks. They're going to have waves of players to throw at him.
I think coaching matters. I think Ty Lue's an underrated coach.
Yes.
I think Ty Lue should get credit for sticking with Kevin Love at the 5. I think Ty Lue should get credit for dusting the mothballs off Tristan Thompson, and I think probably saving Tristan Thompson's relationship with Ms. Kardashian because given what he's done, she's certainly not staying with him if he's not still famous and in the league. So I think there's a lot of things he deserves credit for that people don't necessarily recognize. They don't want to give credit for because LeBron's there, but he's not as good of a coach as Brad Stevens. I would agree with you. I also think Stevens has a template about how do we take the others, the non-LeBron players, out. Look at what Indiana did. Do some of that. Look at what Toronto did. Do none of that.
Yeah.
So I do think this is going to be, I believe, a series that Cleveland wins in 4 or 5 that you feel like, man, Boston could have been up 3-2 after. You know what I mean? That I do think it'll be close games. I was being a little tongue-in-cheek earlier when I was saying game 1. I think it'll be a blowout. I think Cleveland will win. But I think it's close games, and Boston's got bodies to throw at LeBron. Marcus Morris, take him for 10 minutes. Your guy, is it Yabusele?
Gershon, Yabusele. Semi Ojeleye.
No, Semi Ojeleye is the guy I'm thinking of. They're both built similarly, but Semi looks like an NFL tight end.
Yeah.
You lean on him for 10 minutes. Marcus Smart, who I consider like a rich man's Lance Stevenson. You go breathe your, I imagine, bad breath on him and lean on him and do those types of things. Like that will... LeBron still gets his, but against Toronto, it looked like he was practicing. Mm-hmm. And against Indiana, it looked like he had to work for everything. I think Boston will be closer to that.
One of the reasons that Boston does well against a team like Golden State and Houston, the last couple of years, they played excellent against Golden State.
And I want to talk about that series.
Yeah, they played great against those two teams is because when you try to create mismatches against Boston, it doesn't work. They'll switch everything, and they've got good defenders at key positions. If you just try to blow through them, it can work because, a guy like LeBron, they don't have an individual answer for. A guy like Embiid, well, Baines played pretty well against him. They had an answer. Giannis had great moments in this series. LeBron is capable in this series, if he wants to go for 40-plus every single night. But is that a winning formula in a series like this? Because, Nick, I think if LeBron wants to average 40, Boston's going to let him. If they can keep J.R. Smith, Kyle Korver, and Kevin Love from eating them up from beyond the three-point line, Boston's going to take their chances with that type of matchup.
Yeah, here's the thing. LeBron I think that was obviously the strategy in round 1 against Indiana strategy. We're not going to double him, and he still averaged 8 assists a game, right? And those guys weren't hitting shots. He could have averaged 11. The guys were just missing open shots. In round 1, LeBron averaged 34, 10, and 8. In round 2, he averaged 35, 8, and 11. Like, his performance has been relatively stable. The difference is the other guys. I think Kevin Love, all of a sudden being back to who he was the first 30 games of the year, is wildly important for them, not only in this round, but if they're going to have even a puncher shot against what I believe will be Houston, I think the world believes will be Golden State.
You think it's Houston. You're right. The world does still believe it's Golden State. Who's the most important player in that series?
James Harden.
Okay.
James, for the series and for his own rep. Listen, Harden, the last 4 years, you can put his regular seasons against anybody. Steph, KD, LeBron, Russ, anybody. He arguably could have won 2 of the last, maybe even 3 of the last 4 MVPs, assuming he wins this one. If he is a no-show or plays poorly in this round, no one will ever care about him again. Like that seems extreme. That seems unfair. He will never be considered for MVP again, no matter what he does in the regular season. People don't want to believe in him. People don't like the style in which he plays. They think it's herky-jerky, which it is. They think it tricks the refs, maybe it does. I have tremendous respect for what he's able to do. I think drawing fouls is a skill. I think his defense was unfairly maligned even when it was bad because he had to carry such a heavy offensive load. But he's got to go look like an MVP. Like, if the Rockets are going to win, I think they have to have the best player on the court. And you can say, oh, that's unfair. James Harden's going to be the league MVP this year. He should be able to be the best player on the court, as good as KD is, as good as Steph is, and you know from doing first things first with me, there's a number that I haven't gotten over all year. Playoffs included, the Rockets have played 55 games with Harden, CP3, and Capella. They are 50-5 in those games. That's a remarkable number. And so I feel like they can beat Golden State if they play their best. I think the Rockets at their best would beat Golden State. I also think
at its best.
Golden State at its best is an odd one because theoretically at its best it means Clay, KD, and Steph all at their very best. I don't think that's beatable, right? But I also think that's not something that can happen over 7 games. You know what I mean? I think the you can't ask 3 jump shooters to hit jump shots for all 7 games. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I think Houston it's almost a must-win in game 1, as odd as that is. Like, you work so hard for home court while Golden State coast.
Can't cough it up right away.
Yeah, it would just be so mentally deflating if you lose game 1. 1-1 going back to Golden State with Houston having lost game 1 compared to having lost game 2, to me, is just for them mentally different, at least in my eyes.
All right, before I let you go, Dwane Casey fired in Toronto. Just happened.
For real?
For real. Out. Surprised?
Man, I'd have traded DeRozan.
Might not be an either or.
Sure. Wow, that's a brutal turn of events for the guy. Makes me feel good that he won that award from his fellow coaches.
And he's probably going to win the media award.
Listen,
he's
59 wins matters. Like, doing what they did with that bench matters. Reinventing things on the fly matter. So you can't beat the greatest basketball player ever. That's not. It's an unfair standard. And in an odd way, if the Cavs remember that game against Philly when Philly had a 30-point lead. Cleveland comes essentially all the way back and loses. That was the difference between Cleveland being the 3 seed and the 4 seed. If Cleveland's the 3 seed and Toronto doesn't play them till the conference finals, does he get fired? Even if they get swept? Like, it's because of the round in which they had to play him. And so the reason I say I'd trade DeRozan is, unless it's Steph and Clay, I haven't seen the template of your 2 best players being in your backcourt and you win a title. It's why Wall and Beal are not going to work. It's why Lillard and McCollum have a ceiling.
Oh, Houston would work if
they're sure. I guess that would be an example if it happens. That team is you. Let me maybe rephrase it. One of them's got to be an MVP then, right? Just like it was in Golden State. You can argue I would argue the 2 best players on the Bad Boy Pistons were Isaiah and just like the collective front court toughness. But Isaiah was an MVP caliber player. Like, DeRozan was awesome this year, but he has a ceiling. Like, let me ask you real quick. Would you do DeRozan for Boogie?
No.
For either side?
My greater concern with Boogie is that what does he play like without the carrot of a contract in front of him? Sure. I mean, does he go back to being the guy we saw in Sacramento who was kind of fat and content? And I use that figuratively, not literally. Or does he continue to be the hungry guy we've seen over the last...
There are going to be some great coach quotes about Dwane Casey getting fired.
Yeah.
Popovich going to...
Somebody track down Stan Van Gundy. He's still got...
Well, Stan Van... Carlisle will say something wild. Popovich... That's tough for Dwane Casey, man. But Toronto, I
think Masai Ujiri for years has wanted to hire his own guy anyway. Remember, Masai's been there forever, but he inherited Dwane Casey. And they have got a good relationship and an improved relationship over the years. But I think Masai, like any GM, has wanted to hire his own guy. The question is, who's the blue chip guy out there? Like, who is the guy they go out and get?
That's the argument. Everyone fires coaches. There are closer to... There's almost a dozen teams in the NBA. That's unfair. 8 teams in the NBA that are kneecapped by their coaching, that have terrible, awful coaching. I believe the Bucks had 2 this year. Just coaches that, and maybe that's unfair to the interim guy, Prunty, but he wasn't helping them, and Jason Kidd certainly wasn't helping them. You fire Dwane Casey, you might end up with an incompetent. There is not a surplus of quality coaches in this league. And by the way, I don't think Dwane Casey will be unemployed for long.
No,
I think
no.
he'll get a job. He's a good coach, man.
You know, who they get. Maybe they go out and get Mike Budenholzer, who was best known last as getting broomed up by LeBron in the playoffs with Atlanta for years.
I mean, just add him to the graveyard, I guess.
I know. Nick, great to see you, man. Keep up the great
Absolutely.
work on First Things First. FS1 every day, 6:30 to 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for stopping by, my friend.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be on here. I appreciate it.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.